What if the reason a man was sentenced to death wasn't the murder he committed, but the fact that he refused to lie? Albert Camus published The Stranger in 1942. Its protagonist, Meursault, is one of the most unsettling figures in modern literature, not because he is violent, not because he is cruel, but because he will not pretend, not for love, not for grief, not for God, not even to save his own life. This is not a story about a killer. It is a story about what happens to a person who tells the truth in a world that has quietly agreed, without ever saying so, that a certain amount of lying is simply required. And the question Camus is really asking underneath everything is whether that agreement is one you've made too. The novel opens with one of the most famous sentences in all of literature. "Mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure." People read that line and feel something go wrong, a kind of wrongness they can't immediately name. He doesn't say, "my mother." He isn't sure when she died. And the sentence ends with a comma and a shrug, "I can't be sure," as if the detail barely matters. Most readers assume this means he didn't love her, but the novel is more careful than that. He had placed her in a care home because, he admitted honestly to himself, they had run out of things to say to each other. She had found community there. He visited when he could. That is not hatred. That is a relationship described honestly as it actually stood. The wrongness in that opening sentence isn't absence of love. It's absence of performance. Every other novel you have ever read about a character whose mother has just died has given you performed grief. Meursault gives you the unmediated fact. She died. I'm not sure when exactly. And we experience that as cold because we are so accustomed to the performance that we've forgotten it's a performance. That is the first thing this book is doing to you. Before we go further, the most important thing to understand about Meursault is what he is not. He is not empty. He feels the weight of the sun on his skin. He takes real pleasure in swimming, in the cold salt of the sea, in the warmth of a woman beside him. He notices how evening light changes the color of the water. He is one of the most physically present characters in modern literature, alive to sensation, attentive to the texture of the world. What he does not do is convert that experience into narrative. He doesn't ask what it means. He feels the sun, and the sun is the sun. Not a metaphor for his mood, not evidence of anything, not a symbol, just the sun. This distinction between experiencing and narrating experience is the key to everything in this novel. Most of us don't just live our lives, we perform them. We translate raw feeling into socially legible signals. We grieve in ways that can be read. We love in ways that can be confirmed. We present ourselves as people who feel the right things, in the right amounts, at the right moments. Meursault doesn't do any of this. Not because he has decided not to, but because the mechanism that takes what he feels and packages it into performance simply doesn't operate in him. So if he isn't cold, and he isn't empty, and he isn't performing, what is he? That question is what the rest of this novel spends around 150 pages trying to answer. The morning after his mother's funeral, Meursault goes swimming. He meets a woman named Marie. They laugh. They watch a comedy film together. They spend the night together. He hadn't cried at the vigil. He had drunk coffee and smoked a cigarette. When offered a last look at the body, he had declined not with sorrow, but with the quiet ease of someone who simply doesn't feel the need. Now, is this monstrous? Or is it something else? Here is what I think Camus is showing us. When someone we love dies, we are not only processing grief, we are also performing it. We know without anyone telling us the correct duration of silence, the correct expression to wear, the correct things to say. We know that drinking coffee at the wrong moment looks bad. We know that a comedy film the next day is unacceptable, not because anyone has written these rules down, because the social contract around death is one of the most rigidly enforced agreements we have. Meursault doesn't know these rules, or rather he knows them, but he cannot make himself follow them because he cannot perform what he doesn't feel in that form, at that moment. And here is the thing that no one tells you at the start of The Stranger. The jury that will later sentence him to death is watching this. They are taking notes. Not about the murder, about the coffee, the cigarette, the film. That is what this man will die for. Shortly after the funeral, Meursault begins seeing Marie. They swim together in the sea. They spend evenings together, and nights. There is warmth between them, the novel makes this clear. One evening, she asks whether he loves her. He says he doesn't think so. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say no. He says he doesn't think so. That is the language of honest uncertainty, not indifference. He can't find certainty about this feeling, so he won't name it as something he's certain of. Think about every conversation where someone has said "I love you," not because they were sure, but because the silence after the question was too heavy to hold, because the relationship expected the word, because saying it was easier than admitting, "I don't actually know." Meursault will not do this, not even when it costs him. When Marie later asks if he'd marry her, he says it makes no difference to him, but if she wants to, they can. She says he is peculiar. He agrees, calmly, without hurt. What he is refusing here, philosophers call bad faith, the performance of a role, because genuine reckoning is too difficult. Most of us live in bad faith constantly. Meursault simply doesn't. Whether that makes him honest or hollow is a question the novel will not answer for you. Halfway through the novel, on a beach blazing with heat, Meursault kills a man. The scene is strange. It happens in fragments, the blinding sun, the Arab man's knife catching the light, heat so intense it distorts thought itself. Camus gives no satisfying motive because there isn't one. Or rather, the only explanation Meursault later offers is that the sun was in his eyes. Camus is not asking you to excuse this. He isn't. But he is asking you to notice something. The novel goes to trial. And at the trial, which you might expect to be about a death on a beach, something very strange happens. The prosecution barely mentions the beach. Instead, it asks about a funeral, a coffee cup, a cigarette, a comedy film. And suddenly, you realize this trial was never about what happened on the beach. It was always about something else. The Trial of Meursault is one of the most precise pieces of social criticism in modern literature. And it is precise because Camus doesn't exaggerate it. He doesn't make the court cartoonishly unjust. He makes it recognizable. The prosecution calls witnesses from the days around his mother's death. It asks, did he weep? Did he keep vigil through the night? The morning after the burial, did he attend a comedy film with a woman he had just met? Yes to all of it, he did. Therefore, the prosecution argues here stands a man without a soul. The defense, for its part, tries to argue that Meursault is fundamentally decent, that his honesty, though uncomfortable, speaks well of him. The jury doesn't buy it. And here is why. The court is not trying to understand Meursault, it is trying to read him, and he doesn't read the way people are supposed to read. He offers no performed remorse, no visible fear, no contrite body language they can recognize. He gives them nothing familiar to hold on to. So they convict him not primarily for what happened on the beach, but for what failed to happen at the graveside, for the coffee, for the cigarette, for the refusal to perform grief on schedule. Camus' point is not that the world is cruel. It is something sharper. The world cannot tell the difference between a man who feels nothing and a man who simply will not pretend that he feels what he doesn't. And what it cannot read, it removes. In his cell, awaiting execution, Meursault receives a visit from a prison chaplain. The priest offers God, comfort, repentance. The idea that death opens onto something rather than simply ending. Meursault declines, quietly at first. Then in the only moment of real intensity in the entire novel, something in him breaks open. He tells the chaplain, none of his certainties are worth a single hair of a living person's head. That the priest moves through the world as if everything were already settled, while he, Meursault, who has nothing left, holds more certainty than any of them. The certainty of this life. This one. The only one. He is not angry at God. He is furious at the demand. The same demand made at his mother's funeral, in the courtroom, by every institution that has spoken to him, that he give a performance he does not possess. That he say he believes what he does not believe. And he refuses, as he has always refused. Only now, finally, out loud. After the chaplain leaves, something in Meursault settles. Camus writes that he opens himself to the gentle indifference of the world. He looks at the night sky and lets go of the idea that anything could have been different. Not peace, exactly. Something raw, the feeling of a person who has stopped demanding that the universe explain itself and found, in that silence, something that works like freedom. I want to be honest about what Meursault is, and is not. He helps a man harass a woman without discomfort. He kills someone and can't explain why. There are passages where his refusal to perform feeling looks less like clarity and more like the simple absence of the part of a person that cares what happens to others. Camus built this ambiguity in deliberately. He didn't want a saint. But here is why the novel refuses to leave. We live in a time of relentless performance. Social media asks us to curate grief, to display joy in approved formats, to signal the right emotions at the right moments, or face a version of what Meursault faced. Not a death sentence, but a quiet withdrawal of belonging, a being found wanting. We are all, constantly, being read. Meursault asks, very simply, how much of what you say is actually true, and how much is what you've learned to say in its place? Most of us have never fully answered that. We live somewhere in between, performing, sometimes, and feeling, sometimes. I want to end not with a verdict on Meursault, the novel refuses one, and I think that refusal is the point, but with the question that I believe was always the actual subject of this book. If honesty, taken to its fullest expression, costs a person everything, what does that tell us about the world that demands the dishonesty? Meursault is not a model for living. He is too incomplete, too willing to pass through the world without examining the harm he moves past. But he is a limit case. A thought experiment, dressed in a body, placed at the center of a world that cannot accommodate him. And what I find most striking reading this novel, returning to it over years, is not the strangeness of Meursault. It is how recognizable the world that destroys him is.